The sky above the alien capital was burning. Black smoke rolled across shattered towers, and red fire rained from orbit as human ships struck military targets below. Sirens wailed through broken streets, mixing with the deep thunder of explosions. What had once been a shining city of crystal and light was now a field of ash and falling stone. Sergeant Daniel Cross moved through the ruins with his rifle ready. He was tired. His armor was cracked, his left shoulder burned from a plasma strike, and his squad was gone, scattered or dead in the chaos. Orders still echoed in his helmet, but the battlefield had become a maze of noise and fire. This planet had been an enemy stronghold for years. Its rulers had sent fleets against human colonies. Millions had died on both sides. Daniel had learned long ago not to think about politics during a mission. You survive, you finish the job, you move on. Another explosion rocked the ground. A nearby tower collapsed, throwing dust and metal into the air. Daniel was knocked to one knee. He cursed softly and forced himself up. "Command, this is Cross," he said into his comm. Only static answered. He was alone. Daniel turned down a narrow street, hoping to reach the extraction zone before orbital fire intensified. As he moved, his helmet sensors picked up faint life signs ahead. Weak, but still there. He hesitated. In war, you learn to ignore many things, but something about the reading felt wrong. It wasn't a soldier's signal. It was too small, fragile. Daniel followed it. The signal led him to what remained of a large structure, half buried under rubble. Cracked symbols on the walls marked it as important, royal maybe. The entrance had collapsed inward, sealing most of the interior. Another blast shook the city. Debris fell. Daniel knew he didn't have much time. He climbed over broken stone and twisted metal, forcing his way inside. The air was thick with dust and smoke. His visor adjusted, revealing a wide chamber split by fallen columns. At the center, pinned beneath a massive slab of stone, lay the alien queen. Daniel froze. He recognized her from intelligence briefings. Tall, even while injured, her silver-blue skin dulled by blood and ash. One of her arms was crushed beneath the rubble. Her breathing was shallow. A shattered crown lay nearby. She lifted her head slightly when she saw him. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Enemy and enemy, survivor and dying ruler. Daniel raised his rifle on instinct, then lowered it. She was dying. He could see it in her eyes. "Human," the queen said, her voice weak but clear. Her language was translated through his suit. "You have come to finish it." "No," Daniel said quietly. He scanned the chamber. The life sign was stronger now, and closer. "I picked up another signal." The queen's eyes flicked to a dark corner behind her throne. "Please," she whispered. The word stunned him. Daniel moved carefully, stepping around broken stone. In the corner, hidden behind a collapsed wall panel, he found a small figure curled into herself. A child. The alien girl was young, her skin a lighter shade than the queen's. Her eyes were wide with terror. She trembled as Daniel approached, pressing herself against the wall. "It's okay," he said softly, though he knew she might not understand. He lowered his rifle completely. The queen spoke again, urgency pushing through her pain. "She is my daughter, the last of my blood." Daniel looked back at her. "The city will fall," the queen continued. "Your weapons are too strong." "I cannot move. I cannot save her." Daniel's mind raced. Extraction was minutes away. Staying meant risk. Court-martial, worse. But leaving the child here meant death. The queen struggled to breathe. "I will never see my daughter again," she said. Not as a plea, but as a truth she had already accepted. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. "Take her. Hide her. Let her live." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. This was the enemy queen. Her orders had led to attacks that killed friends he had trained with, people he had laughed with. Yet here she was, broken beneath stone, asking a human soldier to save her child. "I can't promise safety," Daniel said. "This galaxy isn't kind." The queen met his gaze. "Humans are stronger than you know," she said faintly. "Not in weapons, in choice." Another explosion rocked the chamber. The ceiling cracked further. Daniel made his decision. He knelt beside the child, slowly removed his helmet, and met her frightened eyes. "I won't hurt you," he said. "I swear." The queen watched closely. Daniel turned back to her. "I'll take her," he said.
"I'll keep her alive." The queen exhaled a shaky breath. "Say it," she whispered.
"Say it as a promise." Daniel swallowed. "I promise," he said.
"I will protect your daughter." For the first time since he had entered, the queen smiled. It was small, tired, relieved. "Then my death has meaning," she said. She reached into the rubble with trembling fingers and pressed a small, glowing object into Daniel's hand. "Proof," she said. "One day she may need it." Her strength faded quickly after that. Her eyes closed. The life sign on Daniel's display flickered, then went still. The alien queen was dead. Another blast hit nearby. The chamber began to collapse. Daniel didn't hesitate. He scooped the alien child into his arms. She made a small, frightened sound, clutching his armor. He activated his emergency shield and ran. Stone fell around him as he pushed through the ruins. Fire chased him down broken streets. His calm crackled back to life. "Cross." "Where the hell are you?" a voice shouted. "On my way," Daniel said, breathing hard. "I have. A survivor." He didn't explain more. The extraction ship hovered above the city's edge, engines roaring. Daniel sprinted as debris rained from the sky. A cable dropped. He clipped in with one hand, holding the child tight with the other. They were pulled upward just as the ground below collapsed into flame. From above, Daniel watched the alien capital burn. The child trembled in his arms. Slowly, she looked up at him. Her eyes were the same color as the queen's. Daniel tightened his grip.
"You're safe," he said, though he wasn't sure it was true. "I've got you." The ship jumped to hyperspace moments later, leaving the ruined world behind.
Far away, beyond fire and war, a promise had been made, and a future had changed. The human fleet returned in silence. Daniel Cross stood inside the medical bay of the carrier ship, his armor finally removed, his body shaking now that the battle was over. White lights hummed above him. Machines beeped softly. Medics moved around him, checking burns and cuts, but Daniel's eyes were fixed on the small figure sitting on the bed beside him. The alien child held her knees to her chest. A thin emergency blanket was wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes moved constantly, watching every sound, every shadow. She did not cry. She did not speak. She only watched. "She hasn't harmed anyone," Daniel said for the third time. Across from him stood Commander Hale, a tall woman with tired eyes and a tight jaw. She looked from Daniel to the child and back again. "You brought an enemy royal onto a human warship?" Hale said carefully. "Do you understand what kind of problem this is? She's a child," Daniel replied. His voice was steady, but his hands were clenched. "She's not a weapon. That's not how the Council will see it." Daniel stepped slightly in front of the girl, without thinking. It was a small movement, but Hale noticed. "You're protecting her," the commander said. "I gave my word." Hale sighed and rubbed her forehead. Sergeant, wars don't run on promises. They run on fear. Then maybe that's why wars never end, Daniel said. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the ship filled the space between them. Finally, Hale turned to the medic. Finish his treatment. I'll report this to command. She paused at the doorway.
She stays under guard. Both of you, Daniel nodded.
That's fine. When Hale left, the room felt smaller. The child glanced up at Daniel. Her eyes were still sharp, still afraid, but something else was there now. Curiosity. Daniel lowered himself onto the edge of the bed so he was closer to her level. He moved slowly, carefully.
My name is Daniel, he said, tapping his chest.
Daniel. She stared at his mouth as he spoke. He pointed gently toward her. Do you have a name? She hesitated. Then, very quietly, she said something in her own language. The translator struggled, then produced a soft sound. Lyra, Daniel repeated. Her eyes widened slightly. He had said it correctly. The days that followed were tense. News of the alien child spread through the fleet like fire. Whispers filled hallways. Some soldiers were angry. Others were afraid. A few were simply confused. An emergency council was called. Daniel stood in the center of a wide chamber, surrounded by screens filled with human leaders. Lyra sat beside him, guarded by 2 soldiers. She held the glowing object her mother had given Daniel, now hanging from a thin cord around her neck. She is the daughter of the enemy queen, one council member said. Her existence is a threat. She is a child. Daniel replied again. And the war is over. For us, another voice snapped. Not for everyone else. A third speaker leaned forward. Sergeant Cross, why did you do it? Why risk everything for her? Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked down at Lyra. She wasn't watching the council. She was watching him. Because someone asked me to, he said finally. And because I could. Silence followed. The council argued for hours. Some wanted Lyra handed over to neutral space. Others demanded she be imprisoned. A few suggested she be quietly erased to prevent future conflict. Daniel stood through all of it. At the end, a decision was made. Lyra would remain alive. She would be hidden. Official records would say. The Queen's bloodline ended in the capital's destruction. Daniel Cross would be responsible for her care under strict supervision. When the session ended, Daniel felt no relief, only weight. They were transferred to a remote human station at the edge of controlled space. It was quiet, isolated. Surrounded by stars and nothing else, Lyra was given a small room near Daniel's quarters. Medical staff studied her biology carefully. Everything was done politely, but cautiously. Trust did not come easily. At first, Lyra refused to eat unless Daniel was present. She slept curled up in a corner of her bed. Loud noises made her flinch, and a uniform not his made her freeze. Daniel adjusted. He ate when she ate. He sat nearby while she slept. He spoke to her constantly, even when she didn't answer. He told her about Earth, about oceans and rain, about food that grew from the ground instead of machines. Slowly, she changed. Weeks passed. Her posture relaxed. She began to explore the station, always staying close to Daniel. She learned human words quickly. She laughed once, softly, when Daniel failed badly at drawing an animal for her. That laugh stayed with him. But peace never lasts long. A human officer confronted Daniel one evening in the corridor. You're raising a future enemy, the man said flatly. When she grows up, she'll remember who killed her people. Daniel stopped walking. She'll remember who saved her. Blood matters more than kindness, the officer replied. Only if you teach it to, Daniel said. That night, Daniel found Lyra awake, sitting on her bed, clutching the glowing object tightly. She dreams, the translator said softly.
Daniel sat beside her.
Bad dreams? She nodded. Fire, she whispered. Falling sky. Daniel didn't know what to say. He placed a careful hand on her shoulder. She leaned into it, just a little. I promised your mother something, he said quietly. I won't break it. You stay? Yes, Daniel said without hesitation. I stay. Far away, beyond the station, signals moved through dark space. Information passed between hidden ships. Rumors grew. The Queen's daughter might still be alive. And if she was, many would come looking. Daniel stood by the observation window days later, watching stars drift past. Lyra stood beside him, her hand resting against the glass. He knew the galaxy would not let them stay hidden forever. But he also knew this. He had made a promise once, in fire and ruins, and he would keep it, no matter what came next. The first warning came quietly. Daniel noticed it while walking with Lyra through the station's lower corridor. The lights flickered for half a second, so fast that most people would have missed it. But Daniel had learned long ago to trust small signs. He stopped. Lyra felt it too. Her steps slowed, and her fingers tightened around his hand. Daniel? She asked softly. Just a moment, he said. His wrist display blinked. A security notice appeared, then vanished. Unauthorized signal detected. Source unknown.
Daniel's jaw tightened. The station had been quiet for months.
Too quiet. He had known it would not last. That night, Commander Hale arrived without warning. Daniel was eating with Lyra when the door slid open. Hale stepped inside with 2 guards. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. We need to talk, she said. Lyra froze. Daniel felt her press closer to his side. Hale noticed and raised a hand to the guards. Wait outside. When they were alone, Hale spoke quickly. We intercepted long-range scans near this sector. Someone is searching. Carefully. Aliens? Daniel asked. Not just one group, Hale replied. Several. Daniel exhaled slowly. They know she's alive. Yes. Lyra looked between them. They come for me? Hale hesitated. Yes. The word hung in the air. Daniel stood. Then we move her. That won't be enough anymore, Hale said. This station was meant to hide her from governments, not hunters. Hunting a child, Daniel said bitterly. Power doesn't care about age, Hale replied. Some want her dead. Others want to use her. Either way, this place is no longer safe.
Lyra's voice was quiet.
Because I am Queen's blood. Yes, Hale said. Lyra lowered her head.
Daniel knelt in front of her. Listen to me, he said firmly.
You are not a weapon. You are not a prize. You are a person. No one gets to decide your worth but you. She looked at him. They will hurt you. Daniel smiled faintly. They'll have to try. Within hours, the station shifted into lockdown. Civilian movement stopped. Security doubled. Officially, it was a systems test. Unofficially, it was fear. 2 days later, the attack came. It began with silence. Then alarms screamed. Daniel was already moving when the first blast shook the station. He grabbed Lyra and pulled her behind a reinforced wall as lights died and emergency red filled the corridors. Stay with me, he said. I am, she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. Station security rushed past. Overhead announcements shouted warnings. Hull breach on Deck 7. Unknown vessels detected. Daniel activated his comm. Hale, where do you need us? Static crackled. Then her voice cut through. Hangar 3. Now.
They ran.
Smoke filled the air. A corridor ahead exploded inward, throwing metal across the floor. Daniel shielded Lyra with his body as they slid across the ground. She coughed, but didn't cry. When they reached the hangar, the truth became clear. The attackers were not one force. 3 different ship types floated outside the shattered bay shields. Sleek black vessels, heavy armored carriers, and long, thin ships marked with alien symbols Daniel recognized from briefings. Warlords, mercenaries, loyalists, all here for one child. Gunfire echoed through the hangar. Human soldiers fought desperately, but they were outnumbered. Boarding craft slammed into the deck. Hale stood near a transport ship, directing troops.
She spotted Daniel and waved. "Get her aboard!" she shouted.
Daniel sprinted toward the ship with Lyra. Halfway there, an explosion tore the floor apart. He lost his footing. Lyra slipped from his grasp. "Lyra!" he shouted. She landed hard but rolled to her knees. Fear flashed across her face, but she didn't freeze. She ran. An alien soldier dropped in front of her, tall and armored, weapon raised. Daniel didn't think. He tackled the alien from behind, firing at close range. The body fell. Daniel scrambled to his feet and reached Lyra, pulling her into his arms. "Don't look," he said. "I didn't," she replied, her voice shaking but controlled. They reached the transport. Hale slammed the hatch shut behind them. The ship launched under heavy fire. As the station burned behind them, Daniel knew there was no going back. They jumped into deep space with no clear destination. Days passed in constant motion. They moved from system to system, never staying long. Supplies ran low. Sleep came in short bursts. Lyra grew quieter. One night, as the ship drifted between stars, she finally spoke what had been building inside her.
Daniel,
she said, sitting across from him. "Yes?" "If they take me," she said slowly, "many will die." Daniel looked at her. "That's not your choice to carry." "But it is true," she insisted. "They fight because of me. They fight because they choose to," he said. "You didn't start this." Lyra looked down at the glowing object around her neck. "My mother said blood has power. Only if you let it control you," Daniel said. She met his eyes. "What if the only way to stop them is for me to go to them?" Daniel felt a cold fear grip his chest. "No, they will keep coming," she said. "You cannot run forever." "Watch me," Daniel said sharply. Lyra stood and walked to the viewport. Stars stretched endlessly ahead. "I remember my mother's voice," she said. "She was afraid, not of dying, of leaving me alone." Daniel joined her. "You're not alone. But you are human," she said. "One life." He smiled sadly. Sometimes that's enough. Unknowns to them, another signal moved through space. Old, encrypted, nearly forgotten. On a hidden world far from the war, a damaged ship received a message. A woman with silver blue skin listened in silence. As the data played, her body was scarred. One arm was artificial. Her breathing was slow but steady. Proof confirmed what she had long feared and long hoped. Her daughter was alive. The Queen closed her eyes. The galaxy had lied to her. And now everything would change. The message reached them at the edge of known space. Daniel was repairing a damaged panel inside the ship when the console chimed. He looked up, tired and tense. Lyra sat nearby, reading a simple human book, her legs folded beneath her. "Unknown signal," the ship system announced.
encrypted. High priority.
Daniel frowned. We don't answer unknown signals.
The signal repeated. This time, Lyra felt it. She stood slowly. That sound. It is not human. Daniel hesitated. Every instinct told him this was dangerous, but something in Lyra's voice stopped him. Put it on audio only, he said. The air filled with static. Then a voice came through. Low, controlled, and familiar in a way that made Lyra's heart pound. "By daughter," the voice said. "If you can hear this."
I am alive. Lyra froze.
Daniel's breath caught. He stared at the console, his mind racing. The voice continued.
I do not know who protects you.
I do not know where you are, but I have waited in silence for too long.
I will not wait any more. Lyra stepped closer to the console. Her hands trembled. Mother, she whispered.
Daniel turned to her. Lyra, wait. But it was too late.
Tears filled her eyes. The signal ended as suddenly as it began. Silence fell over the ship. Daniel sat down heavily. We don't know if that was real. I know her voice, Lyra said. I remember it. Daniel looked at her, seeing the child and the air at the same time. If she's alive, this changes everything. Yes, Lyra said. It means the war never truly ended. The signal was not private. Across the galaxy, it was intercepted by fleets, by spies, by those who had waited years for this moment. Power shifted. Old alliances broke. New ones formed overnight. The Queen had survived, and she was moving. Her fleet gathered in secret, old loyal ships repaired and hidden. Crews bound by faith rather than orders. She did not call for revenge. She called for her child. That alone was enough to shake the stars. Daniel and Lyra had no choice but to move again. They traveled toward a neutral system, one rumored to be outside the reach of most powers. But they were no longer alone. Ships followed at a distance. Some sent messages. Others fired warnings. Daniel avoided them all. During one narrow escape, their ship was damaged badly. They barely reached an abandoned mining outpost before the engines failed completely. The outpost was cold and dark, floating near a dead moon. Daniel sealed the doors and began repairs, knowing it would take days. Lyra stood by the viewport, watching distant lights flicker. They are close, she said. I know, Daniel replied. She turned to him. You are tired. So are you, he said. Lyra held up the glowing object her mother had given. This is a key, a symbol, proof.
Everyone wants it, then hide it, Daniel said.
She shook her head. No, it is time. Daniel felt a heavy weight settle in his chest.
Time for what? For me to be seen, Lyra said softly.
Before Daniel could respond, alarms blared. Multiple ships dropped out of warp around the outpost. Too many. Daniel grabbed his rifle. Stay behind me. Lyra didn't argue, but she didn't hide either. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy clang. The doors shook as voices echoed through external speakers. Demands, threats, promises. Then, another voice cut through them all. Daniel Cross, it said. I know you can hear me. Daniel froze. Hail? The voice continued. Stand down. We're here to protect you. Daniel stepped closer to the console. You brought half the galaxy with you. Not all enemies come to kill, Hale replied. Some come to stop the killing. The docking door opened slowly. What followed was chaos. But not the kind born of battle. Human ships formed a defensive line. Alien vessels hesitated. Weapons powered down, one by one. Then a final ship arrived. It was old, scarred, and unmistakable. Lyra gasped. The airlock opened. The queen walked through. She was thinner than Lyra remembered. One arm was metal. Scars lined her face, but her eyes were the same. For a moment, no one moved. Then Lyra ran. The queen dropped to her knees as her daughter crashed into her arms. She held Lyra tightly, as if afraid she might vanish. "I thought I lost you," the queen whispered. "I was not alone," Lyra said, crying. "A human kept his promise." The queen looked up. Daniel stood a few steps away, weapon lowered. They stared at each other, not as enemies this time, but as two survivors shaped by the same fire. "You," the queen said. "You carried her through hell." Daniel nodded once. "I said I would." Around them, fleets waited. Fingers hovered over triggers. The galaxy held its breath. The queen stood, her arms still around Lyra.
There will be no battle today,
she said, her voice carrying through open channels.
Not for my sake.
Not for my daughter. Some commanders protested. Others hesitated. The queen continued. This human showed mercy when he did not have to. He honored a promise when the galaxy did not. If you fire today, you fire against my will. Silence followed. One by one, ships powered down. The outpost remained intact. Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. But he knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. Peace. And peace in a broken galaxy would be the hardest fight of all. The galaxy was watching. From the quiet of the outpost, Daniel Cross stood beside Lyra and the alien queen, observing the fleets that had gathered under tense truce. Ships of human, alien, and mercenary origin hovered in orbit, their weapons powered down, but their presence unmistakable. Every commander understood the same truth. A human had kept a promise, and the heir of a powerful alien empire was alive. That fact alone had shifted the balance of power. Lyra clung to her mother's hand. The queen's metallic arm glinted in the cold starlight, scars running across her face like maps of survival. Her eyes, though weary, were filled with the quiet strength of someone who had endured years of fear and loss. The moment had finally arrived, the reunion she had imagined in silence, the proof that her daughter had survived the worst of humanity and enemies alike. Daniel stood apart slightly, arms crossed, watching them. He felt a strange sense of peace. The war, at least for now, had stopped. He had kept his promise, and that was enough. Still, the galaxy would not forget. There were those who would resent the Queen's mercy, those who would question the human's honor, and others who would see opportunity in the fragile truce. But Daniel knew one thing. He had done the right thing. The Queen finally spoke, her voice carrying over comm channels that reached every vessel. Today, we end this cycle of death. My daughter is alive because one human kept his word. This is proof that trust can survive even in war.
I will not see my child used as a weapon. I will not see more blood spilled for power or revenge.
A murmur ran through the gathered commanders. Some shifted uneasily, but no one raised weapons. For the first time in decades, silence reigned over the galaxy's edge. Lyra stepped forward, holding the small glowing object her mother had given her. It pulsed softly in the starlight. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I am the daughter of the Queen, and I will live, not to fight, not to command, but to protect life wherever I can. Those who wish to harm me or use me as a weapon will not succeed. I have been protected once already, and I will not be alone again." Daniel's chest tightened. He had watched her grow in the months they had fled together. She had been terrified, unsure, and fragile. But now she stood with the quiet dignity of someone who had survived fire, war, and fear, and still refused to bow to it. The Queen placed her hand on Lyra's shoulder. And you will not be alone. Humanity has shown me its strength in ways I could not imagine. Daniel Cross kept his word when the galaxy failed me. That is why you are alive. That is why I choose mercy over vengeance. Across the fleets, sensors captured the Queen's declaration. She spoke not just to Daniel or to Lyra, but to all who listened, allies, enemies, and neutrals alike. The galaxy felt the weight of her words. For the first time, diplomacy came from the unlikeliest source, a human soldier and a child saved by courage and honor. Daniel stepped forward.
We cannot undo the past, he said, addressing everyone. We cannot erase the lives lost in war, but we can choose what comes next. Let this moment show that humans are capable of more than fighting.
We can honor promises. We can protect those who cannot protect themselves. And we can stand against hatred even when it is convenient to give in to it. The Queen's voice softened, turning to Daniel alone.
You are extraordinary, she said. Not because of weapons, not because of strategy, but because you chose to be more than a soldier.
You chose mercy when none was required. That is why my daughter lives.
Daniel shook his head. I did what anyone should do.
No, the Queen replied. You did what few could, and the galaxy will remember it, even if it does not know your name. Lyra stepped close to Daniel, looking up at him with the quiet trust that had developed over months of fleeing, hiding, and surviving together. You stayed, she said softly, even when it was dangerous, even when no one else would. I promised your mother, Daniel replied.
That promise did not end with the war. It never ends.
For a long moment, the three of them stood in the observation chamber, watching the stars drift past. The fleets held position, their captains waiting, uncertain but unwilling to defy the Queen or the child she had saved. Around them, the galaxy seemed to pause, as if acknowledging that something extraordinary had occurred. Not a victory of weapons, but a victory of character. Days turned into weeks as the outpost became a center of negotiation. Daniel oversaw security, ensuring that Lyra and the Queen remained safe while diplomats and commanders worked to establish the fragile peace. Slowly, treaties were drafted. Former enemies began to see each other as participants in a shared future, rather than opponents in endless war. Even as negotiations continued, Daniel spent time with Lyra teaching her what he knew about human life, language, history, and the value of choice. She learned quickly, absorbing not only knowledge but the philosophy that her life had been protected from more than just survival. She was learning to see the galaxy as something she could influence not through fear, but through wisdom and compassion. One evening, after a long day of council meetings, Lyra sat beside Daniel in the quiet observation chamber. "Do you think they will ever trust me?" she asked. Her eyes were wide, searching his face for an answer. "They will," Daniel said, "but not all at once. Trust is built one action at a time.
You've already proven that life matters more than power. That is something even the strongest fear."
Lyra smiled faintly. "I want to help people," she said.
"Not fight them." "And you will," Daniel replied, "and I will help you."
The Queen watched from nearby, her hand resting lightly on Lyra's shoulder.
"You both have done what many thought impossible," she said. "You have shown the galaxy that humanity and life itself is worth more than victory or revenge."
That is the true strength of your species. The fleets eventually dispersed. Some ships returned home, still wary but unwilling to defy the Queen's declaration. Others remained in orbit, watching, learning, and adjusting to a new reality. The galaxy had changed because one human had honored a promise. Months passed, and the outpost became a place of quiet rebuilding. Daniel and Lyra trained together. The Queen slowly returned to health, using her wisdom and influence to guide diplomacy. The child, once terrified and fragile, began to grow into her role, not as a weapon, not as a symbol of power, but as a bridge between worlds. One evening, Daniel and Lyra stood outside the outpost watching the stars stretch across the sky. She had grown taller, stronger, and more confident. Her eyes, bright and alert, reflected both the past she had survived and the future she would shape.
You kept your promise, she said softly, her hand brushing against his. You saved me.
You protected me? Daniel smiled faintly, looking at the countless stars. I did what I had to, he said, and in doing so I found something worth more than survival. I found trust. I found purpose. I found family. Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant light of another system.
The galaxy will be better, she said.
Because we choose to make it so. Daniel looked at her, then at the Queen. It already is, he said.
Because one promise, kept against all odds, changed everything. The three of them stood together in the quiet of space watching the stars, knowing that while challenges would come, hope had taken root. A human had honored a promise. An alien child had survived, and a queen had seen her daughter once more. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of humanity, not in weapons or war, but in honor, courage, and the simple, powerful act of keeping a promise. And for the first time in a long while, the stars felt at peace. Daniel, Lyra, and the Queen turned from the viewport, moving back into the outpost. The universe was vast, uncertain, and still dangerous. But for now, they had each other. And that, Daniel knew, was enough. The promise had been kept. The child had survived, and the galaxy would never forget the human who refused to abandon hope, even when everything else had fallen to fire and ruin. A single choice, a single promise, had changed the fate of worlds. And that was humanity at its finest.